Things just got worse and worse and worse as the night went on. Again, valiant effort down the stretch for the Bucks. Just too little, too late. Let's go down and let's see what Coach Fletch and the rest of the crew has to say. As always, go Bulls. So let's head into the locker room right now and see what the guys have to say about that one. Wow. Where do the Buccaneers go from here? What an incredible atmosphere. What a good win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They snapped a 7-game winning streak. How we feeling, Bucs Nation? It's time to party, baby.
Heat. Welcome to the Recher podcast. Happy Monday. It is February 3rd, 2025. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. The week ahead is going to be even better. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I am everywhere. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. Yeah, Big Dummy Dan, you see it. Yeet all day, buddy. Jey Uso winning the 2025 Men's Royal Rumble. We will break down the Royal Rumble a little bit later on the program today. Also, the big trade in the NBA, Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis. Wow. And everybody's been wondering, what are the comps? Give me a comp in the NFL. Give me a comp in the MLB. Give me a comp in the National Hockey League. I've got them all for you. And it's not going to be any kind of just weird throwing it out there. You know, I did my research, and I'm going to give you 3 trades, one in baseball, one in football, and one in hockey that closely matches up with what we just saw in the NBA. This crazy deal that sends Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis. And of course, there's other players involved, and we got them involved as well, too. I know the big news here just coming out a little while ago was Myles Garrett looking for a trade. He wants out from Cleveland. We're going to talk about that with our guy Ian Beckles, 12:30 today for his weekly hit. We also have at 1:30 today Bailey Adams joining us from Pewter Report to talk about Josh Grizzard, the new offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So plenty to get into today. 4 big guests. We're going to start at 12:10 with Bobby the Chief Taylor. He is putting a lot of faith in me to kind of walk him through the technology. I'm going to keep my phone close by. So hopefully Chief, and you guys know, longtime voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Stanley Cup winner with the Philadelphia Flyers, and just an all-around great guy. If you're a Lightning fan, you know all about Bobby the Chief Taylor, who I sit next to in the press box. And he's also going to not just talk about the team, but also talk about the 2025 Hall of Fame class for our Tampa Bay Lightning. As we saw over the weekend, the great Brian Bradley and Rick Peckham gets in there. So he, of course, knows both of those guys really well. So Chief is going to join us at 12:10. 12:30, Ian joins us for his weekly hit. At 1 o'clock today, Joey Johnston is going to join us. Longtime writer for the Tampa Bay Tribune. We know he does so many things with USF, including being on the call for the USF men's basketball and football teams. He was acknowledged and awarded at the Sneaker Soiree on Friday night with the Tom McEwen Award. You want to talk about a guy that really puts a highlight and a spotlight on our community. Few people have done it better than a guy like Joey Johnston. So we'll chat with him at 1 o'clock today. And then I mentioned Bailey Adams from Pewter Report at 1:30. Sneaker Soiree was on Friday night. Some of the best dignitaries in the Tampa Bay area. And this is the reason why you want to follow me on social media at Recher. Go check out some of the pictures that I was able to get. My girlfriend and I went. We got a chance to take some pictures with Titus O'Neil, with who else? John Cooper and Ryan Pepio and his lovely wife, Lilia, Sonia Bryson Kirksey, Sarah Walsh, who was the MC. A lot of great stuff there. So go check that out on at Recher. Also, the video, Friday night is pretty funny. Friday night, John Cooper came up to me and was asking about the video of him in my shoes. And we played it here the other day and him turning the video around. And he never saw the video. So I showed it to him and he was dying laughing. He was showing so much love to Bleacher Report. He's just such a great dude. We're so lucky to have him. He got the Lifetime Achievement Award, which was great to see. Who else did I see? Oh, Ben Fletcher, head coach of the USF men's basketball team. And I got to meet Ari, the wife of the late great Amir Abdur-Rahim. And to be able to meet her was just an incredible moment. And Thursday night, I will not be going to the Lightning game in Emily Arena. I'll be at the Yingling Center because it is the Love Wins Whiteout Thursday night for the USF men's basketball team. So if you have a chance, let's pack the YC on Thursday night. The American Athletic Conference and USF will be honoring Amir Abdur-Rahim that night. Tom Crean, one of Amir's mentors, as well as our good buddy, Rich Hollenberg, on the call for that one. It is going to be a very, very special night at the Angling Center. I'm going to try to get both those guys on the program to promote that game. So really, really good stuff there. And also, it came out yesterday, and I implore everybody to go check it out. Please give it a read. Share it on your social media platforms if you don't mind. I wrote an article on Ryan McDonough and how the Lightning made it right by bringing Ryan McDonough back to this team. And you can see the difference now with, especially on the blue line, especially on the penalty kill. And not only did I give my 2 cents on Ryan McDonough and what the team lost and gained by having him, and just my entire journey of following him, whether it's as a fan or a media member back in when he originally got traded to the Rangers, me being a Ranger fan growing up. One of the guys that was in that deal was a guy named Chris Higgins, who grew up about 10 minutes from me, and guys that I played hockey with growing up played with him. So I was like, oh, this McDonough guy, centerpiece of the deal, going from the Canadiens to the Rangers, a first-round pick. Let's keep an eye on this guy. How good is this guy really going to be? And then we see his career where he's a captain, and then he ends up being a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. I thought it was probably one of the better things I've written. Please, if you get a chance, go check out the Tampa Bay Lightning social media, at TB Lightning or at J Recher. We have it posted everywhere. But then I asked a bunch of different people too. I asked 7 people that know Ryan a little bit more intimately than I do for their thoughts on him. So Phil Esposito, Julian Brisebois, Victor Hedman, Eric Chernak, Pat Maroon, Brian Engblom, and head athletic trainer Tommy Mulligan. And they really gave us some incredible insight into not just the player, Ryan McDonough, but also the person. And I just got another text from somebody that was really busy. I was playing phone tag with him. I wasn't able to get his 2 cents, but it just shows you the kind of guy that he is. Apologizing profusely, obviously busy as hell because he's still playing, and that's Steven Stamkos. So Stammer literally just hit me up like 5 minutes ago saying, I'm so sorry. We had back-to-back games when you hit me up. I go, bro, I understand. But there's a lot of people, guys, that just kind of, and this, it doesn't have to be professional athletes, in your life. Like, if you don't meet up with them or something, they just like kind of blow you off and they avoid the conversation altogether. That's character. That's the kind of guy that he was, he is, and he'll always be. And even though he's not with the Tampa Bay Lightning anymore, I get that. Stammer will always be a Bolt. He'll be going into the Hall of Fame as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's set roots here. He's going to spend the rest of his probably life here in the Tampa Bay area. So let's make sure we continue to show him love whenever we come across it. And, it is a business, and it sucks. It still sucks with him not here. Our guy, Nick in Sarasota, Myles Garrett being available for a few first should be Bucks priority. Max is not leaving Vegas and doesn't move the needle like MG, who alone wins the NFC this year. I don't care about necessarily moving the needle, but I want guys that are going to contribute. And the Pewter Report article that I read over the weekend, Trey Hendrickson is also another guy from the Cincinnati Bengals that would be a good fit. Knowledge of the NFC South, playing with the Saints, meat and potatoes type of guy. I want one of those 3 guys. I don't care what it takes. Give me Trey Hendrickson. Give me Myles Garrett. Give me Max Crosby. I understand Max Crosby, probably not going to be an option now with Tom Brady and John Spytek and Pete Carroll and now Chip Kelly. Like, he wants to stay there. And he's looking around. He's like, all right, these guys are really making moves to put me in a position to succeed. I think it makes a lot of sense. So for him staying there, whatever. David Terry, what's up, buddy? What's your thoughts on Brandon Halverson signing? Listen, for me, if he signed with the club, with the NHL club, what does that mean for a guy like Jonas Johansson? Maybe Halverson's going to be that guy that's going to back up Andrei Vasilevsky. It's not easy, man. It's not easy being a backup goalie in the NHL. And we're going to ask Chief that here in a second. We'll see if Chief can get on. If he does, I'm going to be so happy. But being a backup in the NHL, it's just sit there. You are not priority number 1. You have to be ready at all times. You have to be ready when your main guy gets hurt, when your main guy gets pulled. You got to be almost completely in the groove when you haven't played in days, weeks. That's got to be one of the toughest jobs in all of professional sports. Can't be easy. We're not talking about a backup quarterback where you may not play at all season. Like, backup goalies in the NHL, you do play. but it's very sparingly. It's like the old uh, food pyramid. Yeah, baby. We're There we go. Look at you, Robert Taylor.
Oh,
Better than Bobby the Chief Taylor. Look at you, you technical savant, you.
oh, you know what? It's getting to the point that I'm going to be on call night and day to help people.
Well, I hope it's not too bad. I hope it goes up from here because we always have a good time, you and I. Chief, thanks so much for joining us today. It looks beautiful out there, man. You home?
Yeah, I am. I'm out in the back here. I just walked my dogs, and the one is a black lab, so he always dives in the pool right after.
Oh,
So he can't get in while he's wet. So he's sitting here looking at me like, what's wrong? What's wrong?
What's going on, man? Lightning just signed Brandon Halverson to be their backup goaltender. I don't know what that necessarily means for a guy like Jonas Johansson, but you're bringing in a guy, signing him to a 2-year deal. Have you heard about that, Chief, or am I filling you in because it literally just happened?
Well, no, I did not know that. I know that name, though. Where was he before?
He's been around the league for a while. I mean, he's a guy, I want to say he may have been with the Rangers in their system, been up and down. He's 28, Traverse City, Syracuse, Rangers, a lot of time, in the Sioux and Greenville, Hartford. He's been that Orlando Solar Bears. But for a guy like this, Chief, I forget about it. We don't have to necessarily go into the nuts and bolts. 6'5", 209. Don't necessarily know what that means kind of for the future for a guy like Johansson. But I want to ask you, being a backup goalie, I was just saying it before you joined us, it's got to be one of the more difficult kind of positions in all of sports because you're not a priority. You're not a priority. It's just like, hey, man, our guys, we're going to give you a chance once every how many games, or, oh, our guy's getting crapped on. He just gave up 5 goals in the first period. All right, go ahead and do your best. Like, it's such a weird thing to be on call at all times. What kind of mindset does that have to take? I know it's different because you didn't play as much back in the day being a backup, but now, I mean, it's got to be a wild job.
Well, yeah, it is. You're right about that. I mean, the biggest problem is the mental part. And, like back in the day, I don't know, with the cap and all the drills and up and down, how you could go. Hey, I'll tell you a quick story about what happened to me one time. Like, Bernie Pront would never play in Boston. So I always had to play against the Bruins. And what they would do, they would send me down for 2 weeks to the minors almost every year to get my game sharp and then come back up, and I'd sit for 6 weeks. So, yeah, go figure. So we played in Anaheim, I believe, on a Friday, and then we came back for a afternoon game in Boston, and I was playing in Boston. And, of course, NBC was Tim Ryan and Ted Lindsay were calling the games back in those days. And they were promoting the big bad Bruins against the Broad Street Bullies, Bobby Orr against Bobby Clark and yada, yada, yada. They're going all this. Well, they find out that I'm starting. They came out of the booth, Ryan and Lindsay, and all the press guys to the old Boston Garden, and they're all trying to find Freddie Shero to find out what the hell they're doing, And they looked all over him. He's sitting on the Zamboni having a Camel.
Cigarette.
Yeah, and they're yelling at him, "What are you doing starting this kid Taylor? We've been promoting this and that, going through it." This went on for a couple of minutes. And finally Freddie gives it this one with his glasses. He says, "It's his turn." Hadn't played in 6 weeks.
Oh my God.
So that's a little bit too drastic, because of all the travel and all the teams and the number of games you play back to back, like you're playing 4 games in a week.
Right.
You got to give the number one guy a rest in that. So for me, it's more of a mental thing. You have to really be strong mentally and really have to prepare mentally, and you have to take it. You have to play a practice almost like it's a game, because you're getting 200 to 300 shots in a practice, and they could care less if they score a 200 on you. But you have to pretend that it isn't. It's a game. That's what tries to keep you sharp.
Chief, do you think it's less difficult or more difficult to back up a guy like Andrei Vasilevsky rather than a guy that's, let's just say, like a middle of the road netminder?
It depends on your relationship personally.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bernie Perrant was the best goalie in the world at that time. And,
Right.
Ben and I had a great rapport. We were each other's biggest cheerleaders. And, and I get the impression that Johansson seems to be a pretty calm guy, and more of a team type of a personality than some other guys would be in the same situation. We moaning and groaning. They wanted to get traded. I got to play more, yada, yada, yada. Johansson doesn't seem like that to me. So if he and Vasi have a great rapport, it's fine. And because the other guy will pull for you too, because if you can play well, that means the number one gets a little bit more rest.
Right. Or you can parlay that into a starting job somewhere else, right? Like if you play that well, I mean, you want to be a starter in the league, and that's, just keep playing well when your number is called. Chief,
don't know what I did, but I just don't see you moving in there, Jake.
Good? Good now? Can you hear me? Chief, are you there?
Huh.
All right, hold on. Let me pull you out, pull you back in. You back? Oh, he's out.
Hello?
Chief, you there? Oh, boy.
Did I lose you?
No, I got you. Can you hear me? We had him for 6 good minutes. Oh, Chief, you there?
Hello?
Chief. All right, I'm going to text him. I'm going to tell him go back out.
Hello?
Oh, man. All right, I'm going to kick him out. Kick from the studio. Kicked him out. All right, go back in. Click back on the... We had him. We'll keep him for a couple more minutes. Chief, listen, he's doing a great job. I want to get him back here because I want to talk about the Lightning Hall of Fame. Brian Bradley and Rick Peckham. He's doing such a great job. The internet's got to be, you're on the water there. It's got to be beautiful. So we're going to try it. Just the fact that Chief did this, because I know he hates doing it. Crap, he has Spectrum internet. I actually have Spectrum, and I love Spectrum. I know it's not for everybody, but for me, I think Spectrum does a good job. So, but I guess it all depends on where you're at, because I know certain people, they don't like it. They'll do Frontier or whatever it is. They're trying to do that in our apartment complex here. Everybody on Frontier and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, no, I'm good. I'm keeping Spectrum. And also because the Lightning games with the FanDuel Sports Network. And I'm a cable guy. I'm not one of those people that are cutting the cord. We're keeping them in.
There you go.
There we go, pal. I got you back. All right. I want to ask you about the Hall of Fame class of 2025. Brian Bradley, Rick Peckham. Just incredible. 2 guys you know really well. I saw the pictures from last night at Fleming's. You guys look like you had a blast. Just talk about those 2 guys, because, my goodness, they well-deserved induction for both of those gentlemen.
Well, I'll start with Brad's. One of the things that's really important, and, when you and I sit up in that press box, and I tell you a lot of times players are never put in the right position to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And before Brad's got here in expansion, he hardly played in Toronto. He played a little bit in Calgary. He was almost like Marty St. Louis when he first came here. When Marty was such a great offensive player in college, but when he went to Calgary, he was like a 4th liner. They wanted him to check. So his skills weren't suited to that. Mm-hmm. Brad's was like around the same thing. So when he came here, he became the number 1 center. And he got his power play time. He got a lot of extra ice time, and he took advantage of it. He really played well. And, Brad's, he's always upbeat too. He's one of those guys that, golly gee whiz, wow. It's infectious, really. When you're around people like that, it's very hard to be angry.
How does he still have that Canadian accent after all these years, Brad?
I know.
Thick as thieves right there.
Yeah.
Hey, got cool, John. Shoot the puck here, bud. I might want to mix in the water, bud.
Yeah.
He's something else. And how about Ricky Peckham, the wedge master?
Oh, my God. You can't believe how good he is with that wedge. Drives me nuts. Anyway, but he, when one of the things that always amazed me, you couldn't talk to him or bother him during warm-up. Because if we're playing a West Coast team, which you saw once a year, he would concentrate on that just in the warm-up of every player on that team. And then when he did a game, he never misread a player. He always had the guy right on. I don't know how they do that, because I can remember one time when I was in Philly, our play-by-play guy had to do an on-ice thing, and he'd come up to the booth, and I had to do the first minute or 2. And ironically, we were playing in L.A., and the only guy that I really knew and knew his number was Luke Robitaille. So Luka Robitaille had a 2-minute shift there.
Oh.
He never got off the ice.
Number 20, the left winger. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
him. I know him.
exactly. Yeah, he never got off the ice. But they move so fast, and those guys are incredible how they pick them up just like that. And I asked them about that one time, and you know what number, or whether they'd see the back of the player because the number's so big. It's the one on the sleeve.
Yeah,
because the one on the sleeve doesn't get hidden as much as the one on the back.
Right. And I think it's the mannerisms too. A righty, a lefty, color of the stick, kind of helmet. Like it's those little nuances that.
Yeah, and how they skate.
Yeah, how they skate. It's amazing, man. Chief, what do you got? What do you want to see from this Lightning team before the Four Nations break? A couple of games before they have some time off. I mean, you've told me for many, many years, and it was so funny, not funny, but ironic that you and Phil, before the sweep in 2019, you would always tell me, Jay, it's not about how many you score. It's about how many you keep out. What do you want to see over these next couple of games so that they go into the break on a high note?
I would like to see their effort there more in every game. Like I don't think, and they even said it themselves, I don't think they had that good of an effort against the Islanders. They weren't as hard on the puck. They weren't as aggressive on the puck carrier. You've got to have. There's one thing that a player can do that you can maybe have a different system. You can do this. You got different line mates, whatever. But your ability to work hard, you control, and I think that's what they have to do. I think you got 4 games left, and all of them. And for me, it's making sure that you bring with that effort all the time because it's not all back to back. Although except Saturday and Sunday it is. But
right.
You got 4 games in 6 days, but that effort has to be there. The consistent effort when they're playing hard and when they got that, as you talk about in the press box all the time. You get in on the forecheck and your puck retrieval, when they do that, they're very good. They keep teams in their own zone a long time. And I think for that, I'd like to see that on a consistent basis.
Chief, before I let you go, give me a quick story that you're allowed to tell on the air about Phil.
Oh, my God. Well, the one was the best one I like is the one when he and Wayne Cashman were in Russia in that series in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And the Russians were dirty. I mean, they would sharpen the end of their stick and spear you like crazy. Jeez. Well, Cash got speared in the mouth. And I think he took something like 20 stitches in his lips, lost a couple of teeth, his tongue. And the worst thing was the ones in the tongue because Cash mumbled anyway.
Oh, jeez.
So when he had the tongue, it was like... So they're actually sitting in their hotel room and they're having some vodka. They got a little high, a little ripped up.
Yeah.
So they started thinking, this was when James Bond was really big.
Mm-hmm.
They said, there's got to be bugs in the room. So they were checking the whole hotel for bugs. They actually found one.
Oh,
it was in the light. But then they're sitting on the floor. They find one, and there's a big lump there. And they said, this is the mother lode. This is the one that controls all the bugs. They pull the rug back, and they see, she says, let's unscrew it. So they I don't know what they did, how they got it, but somebody had a pocket knife or something. They unscrewed it. And it was the chandelier from the ballroom below.
Oh, my God.
That's the funniest story. When you have Phil tell it, he just embellishes it like crazy. And you're crying and laughing all the way through it. He says, the only bad thing about it is they charged me $2,400 for the damn light.
Oh, my God. We do have a lot of fun up in the press box. People ask me a lot of questions. But, I mean, for all the stuff that we talk about for the games, when we look back on our time during the intermissions and just kind of shooting the breeze up there really is nothing like that. It's such a pleasure for me to be a fly on the wall for some of the stories that you guys have. But for you, I mean, when you walk out there after you do your hit in the intermissions and you see us, some crazy shit is about to be spoken about.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about, man.
Yeah. Phil and I always say the luckiest thing for us when we played is that there was no cell phones.
Yeah. That's right. You got that right. 100%.
We'd be in deep doo-doo if we had cell phones back then.
Nobody would have gave him money for that Lightning team. That's for sure.
I know,
the one and only Bobby the Chief Taylor. Chief, I appreciate your mentorship, your friendship. I wouldn't want to sit next to anybody in the press box, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you tomorrow night, partner.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks.
All right, pal. The one and only Bobby the Chief Taylor does not get better than that. He's the man. Look at that. Look at that. I can't wait to see him tomorrow and be like, Chief, you did it. You got it. Technology. The man doesn't beat. I mean, you can't just beat Bobby the Chief Taylor. He has seen everywhere. Let's see this. Joey Knight, our guy from the Tampa Bay Times, Dick Vitale has announced he'll finally make his long-anticipated return to broadcasting this Saturday when Clemson hosts Duke at 6 p.m. That is awesome. Dickie V back where he belongs, calling these college basketball games. Man, that is great. I love that. Dickie V, man. It's just not this. It hasn't been the same without him. It really hasn't been the same without him. He's just got such an energy and such a fervor about him when it comes to college sports. And you see, if you follow him on social media, Dickie V still posting like team of the week, player of the week, diaper dandy of the week, coach of the week. He's still locked in. He's still tuned in. And Friday night at the sneaker soiree over at the Hard Rock, when John Cooper got his Lifetime Achievement Award, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure I did put this out on social media too, but after John Cooper got his Lifetime Achievement Award, they had a surprise for him. And usually when he goes to the event, his wife goes with him. But we all know that Johnny, his son's actually playing in a hockey tournament the past couple of days. Part of the reason why he was late on Thursday to morning skate and keeping us waiting because he was watching Johnny's game. And he told me that too, which is funny. We were assuming that's what it was, and then he confirmed it on Friday night. And then Friday, obviously down, I think it was in Fort Myers. The first surprise was that she was there and she walked across the street, or she walked across the stage and surprised him. And it was great. And it was like, oh wait, that's not the only surprise. The second surprise was that John Cooper got a video tribute and a video, just congratulations from Dickie V himself for winning the Lifetime Achievement Award. And that, I mean, what more can you say? There's a lot of great pictures with Dickie V and John Cooper. You have these positions in your life where, yeah, you're a celebrity. Yeah, you meet these athletes and, these great people, coaches and dignitaries, but it's like what you do with that platform. And both those guys really use that platform for good. You look at the Jimmy V Foundation. We lost Jimmy Valvano, one of Dick Vitale's best friends decades ago, and it still lives on. His legacy lives on. And I tell you what, Jackie Robinson brought up the quote many years ago. It's not what you do, it's what you do with. It's not your life, it's like what your life and how it affects other people. And you look at what Jimmy V's been able to do, right? That impassioned speech at the ESPYs that one year about like, don't feel bad for me, I didn't lose, I'm winning. And Stuart Scott, but especially Jimmy V, right? How many years later, like his legacy is still being felt and people are still raising money for cancer research in the name of Jimmy V and the V Foundation. Like that's very impactful. And it just shows you what sports can really do for a positive, venture like that. Thought wants to know, you hang with the DAE boys at the sneaker soiree? I did. Went to go to see. It was weird when I went to their table. Everybody was like sitting so close together. Everybody's nut to butt. Speaking of nut to butt, Ian is going to join us here in a minute. But nut to butt, Pat and Aaron, who else? Nick and Chris and Casey and Mike Barbaro and who else was there? Ronnie and Bobby. Like, it was great, man. Rodney T. Kraz, the whole crew. Like, it was really good to see those guys. And then Jay Cobian says, Tampa Bay Rays fan, Dickie V. Yes, he loves Dickie. He loves the Rays. He has those season tickets right there by the visitors bench. And I think sometimes when you go to those games, you see those games, the manager and the players on the other team, they're almost more excited to see Dickie V than Dickie V is to see them. All right, let's bring him in a little early here, the one and only Ian Beckles. What's up, man? How's it going over there?
I'm doing well. What part of nut to butt sounds like me? I don't know. No part of that sounds like me. You know that, right? You know that.
The fellas. That's not what the fellas tell me.
Well, the sneaker soiree. Who was I talking? I was talking to the great Nick Wise on Saturday, and he said, you went to sneaker soirees, and I said, I never went to one of those sneaker soirees.
You hosted the show there, but you didn't stay there.
Mm-hmm. I left. So I don't like other people's themes. You know me.
You're a central theme, your own theme kind of guy.
I'll make my own theme. That's okay. But other people's themes, man.
How are things going at the Dignitary Tea and Kava House?
They're wonderful. Business is back to 100%. We got the smoke shop back up. We're selling cigars here. We got our hookahs going. We got a dispensary going to be on the other side. So
Nice.
we're just chilling and sober living and just trying, just got to keep it loose.
4817 Southwest Shore Boulevard. Go check them out right there on the corner. You can't miss it. The brand new sign. Who put up your sign?
My people from Fast Signs over there.
Oh, they crushed it. They crushed it.
Yes, they did.
Go check out Fast Signs. Tell them that you heard it right here on the Jay Recher podcast. Talking to our guy Ian Beckles at the Dignitary Tea and Kava House. Business is booming over there. We just heard the big news, Ian, that Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. He wants out. This is a guy listen, he stuck it out, brother. A lot of guys. I mean, you look at what he and Max Crosby, two guys, and Max, it looks like he's probably going to stay. You got Tom Brady, John Spytek, Pete Carroll. He'll probably hang in there, right? But Myles Garrett, through all the BS with Deshaun Watson and all the stuff with this team, getting rid of Baker, like he's got to be looking around like, all right, enough is enough. I'm not getting any younger. I'm balling out on bad teams, but it's going to cost a lot. Ian, you're talking multiple first-round picks. That's what Khalil Mack, when he was 27, best pass rusher in the league at the time, 2 first-round picks. That's what it's going to cost. Do you think it's a realistic move for the Buccaneers to make, to try to go out and get Myles Garrett, or is that price too steep?
It's not about a steep price, because if you look back at drafts, okay, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka was the number 1 pick or the first round pick. So what if you gave away Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and you got Myles Garrett? I mean, I'll take 1/3 of Myles Garrett and you can have Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. That's real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is real. Myles Garrett, if he's still healthy, is worth whatever you can give. Whatever you can give, because you don't know what you're going to get for 2 or 3 first rounders. If you think that Myles Garrett on this team last year would have been probably worth another win, because he's going to rush the passer. You're going to have to send some people over there. He's going to make Vita Vea better. He's going to make Kalijah Kancey better. We don't really have anybody on our line that makes anybody better. And when you talk about the Aiden Hutchinsons and Khalil Mack in his prime, there's not many of them. So when you can get one, you go get it. But guy like Myles Garrett, I'm kind of an old school guy. I like people to stay put, but I never want to really comment on somebody else's situation. I have no idea what happened to Myles Garrett the last 9 years there. They probably promised him a bunch of things. They gave a guaranteed contract to somebody who had the most question marks ever in the history of football. So why the hell would he want to stay there? They're probably telling him we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Every year he ends up losing. So I like loyalty, but I don't know how they've mistreated him. And if he wants to get out there, then, God bless, take care of your business.
Yeah, I mean, you look at him, you look at Max Crosby, you look at Trey Hendrickson, like just go get somebody on the edge, right? Because I just don't know if you're going to be able to go out and get a guy in the draft that's going to make an impact right away. Like, how often do we see guys on the outside make that much of an impact that aren't top 5, top 10, top 5, right? Like Myles Garrett's a number 1 overall pick, right? Yeah. Khalil Mack everybody's like, who's this kid out of Buffalo? Yeah, because he was that legit and he came to the pros and he balled the hell out. Like, you don't get many guys in this league that are that proficient at rushing the passer. And if you're the Buccaneers, Ian, you're a playoff team, you're not going to be drafting in the top 15. Like, you don't know. It's a crapshoot, right? When you get to the end of that first round, if I'm Jason Light, I'm making that call. Go try to get Myles Garrett. Think about it, Ian. If the news comes out tomorrow that the Buccaneers traded for Myles Garrett, regardless of the price, right? Think about how that changes the perspective of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into the 2025 season. Wow, they got the OC that they wanted. They promoted from in-house, a guy that was really, in tune with making the game plans. Offense should be good. Now defensively, they have arguably a top 5 player in the game. I mean, you're talking about a team now that has to be taken serious, not just in the division, but in the entire NFL.
Well, if the Buccaneers say they draft a number one pick, a pass rusher, okay? Other than quarterback, I think pass rusher may be the next toughest thing to find. Seriously, because there's guys that have 10 sacks in college, and I watch their film, and I'm like, that ain't it, okay? So it's hard to find that next guy. And look, Jadeveon Clowney was a can't miss. Did he hit? I mean, I don't know if Jadeveon Clowney really did double-digit sacks. I mean, he's had a good career, but everybody said he was can't miss. He don't play like can't miss. And you see, you're a Giants fan, Thibodeau, man, he was amazing in college.
Mm-hmm.
All these guys that are amazing in college, it's hard for it to transfer. And when you see guys like Lawrence Taylor wasn't even Lawrence Taylor in college. You see what I'm saying? You can't you couldn't have known that Lawrence Taylor in college would be that Lawrence Taylor in the NFL. So it's
even
so
being
hard.
the number 2 pick. Like
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because there's been number 2 picks that have completely sucked. Mm-hmm. So this is the one thing I know. Like I said, if Myles Garrett is healthy, he's a difference maker. Period. And he's going to make our cornerbacks better. He's going to make the other defensive linemen better. He's going to make our linebackers better. And he's going to make our defensive play callers better. So I don't know if we can get that in the draft.
The Buccaneers, I just mentioned, they keep Grizzard. They promote internally to elevate him to the offensive coordinator spot. Young kid out of Yale. From what Baker Mayfield was saying over the weekend at the Pro Bowl, he had a lot to do with kind of formulating the game plan. We know that doesn't mean the end all be all that he's going to be a great, play caller and he's going to have as much success as Liam Cohen. But I think this is a step in the right direction. And for a guy like Todd Bowles, promoting from the youth, right, and giving this guy an opportunity. I mean, I don't hate it. He was a name our friends at Pewter Report brought up many, many weeks ago. What do you think about them making this choice rather than going outside the building and trying to bring somebody in?
Well, I never like or hate a coordinator move. I just don't, because most of the offensive coordinators that have been signed by the Buccaneers, I'd never heard of before. Right. So, I could say, yeah, that's a good move. That's a bad move. But I'd be wasting my time. This young kid, obviously, the one positive is that there's familiarity with what's going to happen. It's not going to be the same. There's going to be some changes probably, but not many. And what is the most important thing is when the bullets start flying, how he's going to act. Mm-hmm. Because it's easy, when you're sitting there at home, go run this. You got to be thinking 2, 3, 4 plays ahead sometimes, and not everybody's able to do that. So there's going to be some hiccups right off rip. Okay, he's not going to be clean. When somebody's a head coach for the first time, they don't handle a lot of the time situations all that well. And then your 5th, 6th year, you become better at it. So this young kid sounds like he's smart, but there's going to be some hiccups along the way. And I think the fact that Baker doesn't have to learn a new system definitely helps everybody.
Yeah, and I wonder if something like this helps retain a guy like Chris Godwin, right? Because we don't know if he's going to come back, but at the very least, his dead cap is going to be worth $18 million. If he's only going to be $1 million or $2 million more, then I don't see why you wouldn't bring him back, right? I mean, you're going to pay the guy the money anyway. But also, and I wanted to talk about this. I know we mentioned this on our podcast, so you can hear every Wednesday between 3 and 3:30 right here on YouTube. But the Ben Solak thing with the guy that works for ESPN saying that Josh Allen should have done this and Josh Allen should have done that. And this is something that you've said to me for a very long time. It's a lot easier to sit at home on your couch and be like, I should have done this, or that guy should have done this, or I would have done this. And he goes online and says, Josh Allen shouldn't have done this on this 4th round play. And then you see guys like Mitchell Schwartz and you see guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick letting them know, like, hey, it's easy to sit on your couch with your clicker with the heat on. Yeah. But I'm sure you've seen that a lot in your, career after football. These people that, they spend a lot of time covering the game, but those guys, they kind of have to, well, they not kind of, but they really have to be careful speaking from a position where they've never really been before. And I'm sure that's got to anger you as a former pro player of, hey, everybody's entitled to their, opinion. But once you get into the part of the nuances of the game where you can only really know from experience, that's where somebody like myself has to be very careful.
Well, I'm going to say this. It doesn't anger me at all. It really doesn't, because I think a lot of it's just ignorance. Because if I had this Solak guy sitting across from me, I would say to him, what was the progression in the pass, on the play? I promise you he doesn't know. I don't know it. You don't know it. Okay, so if the progression is you hit the tight end first, then you look back to the running back, and you look at the tight end, and the tight end's covered, then you look back, and there's 2 unblocked rushers in your face, what are you going to do? Okay, if you ever watch, I play a lot of Madden and NCAA. That's the only games I play. So I sit there and I watch it on video. I watch how guys play, and I try to get better that way. It's easy to see guys open when you ain't playing. Right. You're like, that guy's wide open, but when you're not playing, your eyes could be everywhere. When you're playing, your eyes can't be everywhere. Your head is one way. Okay, so for somebody to say that guy's wide open, it's easy. And once you say he's wide open, he's not wide open anymore. So anybody who's ever seen the vantage point of from behind the quarterback, I love it. When they show from behind the quarterback, it gives me the willies because I don't know how they see from back there.
Mm-hmm.
Like they almost have to know where everybody's gonna be because as somebody who's only 6'1", if you're not 6'7" and have a long neck like Mike Glennon, I don't know how you see over all that stuff.
Right.
But these guys figure out a way, and they got short guys like Doug Flutie are throwing in alleyways and stuff. But that's a hard thing to do back there, brother. And I hate for somebody wielding a pen to tell one of the best athletes in the world what he should have done. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. When you look at his height, it's amazing what Drew Brees was able to do, right? It was amazing what some of these guys, some of these shorter quarterbacks can do because not only are the guys that you're going up against 6'5" and up, the guys that are blocking for you too, right? Like I mean, it's a lot of man that it's tough for you to be able to see and for guys to be able to throw for 500 yards in their career, but 50,000 is just insane. I want to ask you about the big NBA trades. Luka going to LA.
Yeah.
I mean, just what's your overall thoughts on this absolute blockbuster in the association?
Well, I got up yesterday morning and I went to Ybor City and I was hanging out, driving around, and it popped up on Instagram and I said, that's not possible. That didn't happen. So then I just kept driving and I heard it somewhere and I was like, this is real. And I can't think of a bigger trade in any sport with two bigger athletes and bigger names at different times of their career.
Right.
They're both very polarizing. If you're asking what happened, to me, it's clearly Luka's hard to deal with. I mean, I think it's clear. You don't trade away a 25-year-old kid who is a top 5 talent. He don't play no defense, but as far as there's only a few guys that are walking triple-double that can score 40, 50 points. Those aren't the kind of guys you trade away. And to trade him for an Anthony Davis, who's hurt all the damn time, still a great basketball player, but to me, it was more of an attitude thing. And maybe he just didn't work in the locker room. That happens sometimes. Right. Sometimes guys are just a-holes. I'm not saying he is, but there's got to be something behind you trading away, somebody in the prime of their career. You just don't see it very often.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting too, because I don't always make, a lot of like reports and things like that. But I don't know if you remember this, but last year, Brian Windhorst, who became famous on ESPN because I think he went to the same high school as LeBron James, right? But like, he's got connections, right? He's well connected throughout the league. And he came out last year after game 3 of the NBA Finals. And in that game 3, Luka flopped, got fouled out with like a bunch of time left in the fourth quarter, turned around at the Dallas bench saying, you better effing challenge that, when it was clearly a foul, and he fouled himself out. And Windhorst came on TV and he was just like, you can't do that. They've been saying this. He's always bitching and moaning at the referees. He's moody, blah, blah, blah. And then Windhorst comes on TV this morning and goes, what the crazy thing about that whole story is? This was the first time in my career I've ever criticized an athlete and not one person in the organization said anything. Like,
exactly.
That tells you something, man. Like things like that tell me something, because I've been a part of that. I've been one of those guys that I've criticized one of the teams here locally. It's not like they don't want me to give my opinion, but it's almost like a little bit of a check. Like, all right, hey, like, you said your piece, but you don't know the whole story. Like, this is what it is, blah, blah, blah. That they do that if they respect you. Right. And also because they know that your word carries some weight, but they're going to stick up for their guy. Ian, the fact that nobody stuck up for him to Windy, even in passing, tells you that it's deeper than what you think. And listen, he was in line for a Supermax extension of $340 million next year. Yeah. He's a guy that doesn't, take care of his body. His weight fluctuates a ton. Yeah, you could score, but we've seen this in the NBA, Ian, right? We see these guys that are in their mid-20s that can ball, that can score. Like a Russell Westbrook, like a James Harden. But what do those guys have in common, Ian? No titles, zero championships. So if you're a team that are trying to build it the right way, and you can get out in front of not paying this guy 340. Like, do you think Luka's game is going to age gracefully? Like, Harden's withering away with the Clippers. Russell's doing okay with the Nuggets, but he's coming off the bench. He's not that's Jokic's team. That's Jamal Murray's team, right? So I'm with you, and I think that's where people they forget about it sometimes. Everybody's like, I can't believe that. Why would they trade away? He's going to be the next big star. But the NBA is funny, isn't it? Because you could have these great offensive players, but these teams realize that you got to play defense. You got to be a leader if you're a guy making that much money, because at the end of the day, you're just going to be a guy who scores, and you need to do more than that.
Well, I think, you're blessed to be around a lot of professional athletes, and professional athletes are some of the realest cats, bro. Like, they don't lie. If they really don't lie much, okay? And I'm not going to speak for everybody, but in general, if a professional athlete says something, it's usually law, okay? And when you badmouth a player to an organization and they don't say anything, it's very similar to some of the. Listen, I've been on radio for a long time. I get along with 98.9% of the Tampa Bay area, okay? There's a few people along the way that have rubbed me the wrong way, okay? John Gruden is one of them. The other day I talked on Pat and Aaron about John Gruden, and somebody called me racist and how I'm a Kamala Harris lover and blah, blah, blah. All these times I've talked about John Gruden, nobody's ever called to defend him. Not one time. Chris Forster's another guy, the guy who got caught, sniffing cocaine in the complex. Nobody's ever called and said, you're wrong about Chris Forster. There's a lot. If you attack a team member, teammates come out of everywhere.
Right.
Tony Mayberry, just yesterday, he was talking about Steve White in the locker room. Remember Steve White back in the day? Said somebody talked about Trent Dilfer, and Steve White, he's like, that's my quarterback, yo. You're going to stay off him. That's my guy. You don't really step to athletes. So for none of his teammates to say, yo, Luka's cool, that's as telling as it could be.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I look at this trade, and I think for the short term, it's better for Dallas. I mean, for the Lakers, you look at it, and it's just like, great, you brought in another star, but he don't play defense.
No.
And you're losing defense and rebounding. You're already not one of the better teams in the league. Like, you're not better than OKC. You're probably not better than Dallas. You're not better than a couple of Houston. You're not better than some of these other teams. You're not better than any teams out east at the top. So it's just weird. Like, you can make these star power deals, but judging by them and how they've incorporated Bronny into the team and now bringing a guy like Luka, I mean, they're like the Cowboys in that way, Ian. It's like, it's more important to stay at the top of the headlines and stay on the back page of the newspapers than it is to actually put a team together that's going to win.
I've heard a lot of people talk about this trade this morning, and I couldn't disagree more with some people. They're like, Luka is a great player, and Anthony Davis is no Luka. I disagree. As a whole, I think you could build around Anthony Davis, if healthy, more than Luka for me. Luka is an amazing scorer, one of the best I've ever seen. He don't make people around him better. Anthony Davis is playing defense. He's blocking shots. He's contesting shots. He could put 30 in. I mean, there's rebounds. Luka's he ain't grimy, dude. Not saying he can't win a championship, but maybe that's the best place for him with LeBron, because he's going to have to listen to LeBron. I'm sure that's still LeBron's party. But I have a funny feeling they're going to clash, too, because LeBron is like Kobe, and Luka's like Shaq. So I don't know if it's going to work in the long run.
Yeah, you're right. When you think about it, too, a lot of people keep saying that, all right, this guy, he's not healthy. He doesn't stay healthy. All right, I get that. But still, Anthony Davis has played a lot. He's played almost 800 games in the league, right? 31 years old. This year alone, he's played in 42 games. I mean, he's en route to playing the majority of the games. Ian, he's 25.7 points a game, 9th in the league, 11.9 rebounds, 6th in the league. You're talking about a guy that's top 10 in points and rebounds, a guy that's going to be a sure ballot, first ballot Hall of Fame, and a guy that people say, oh, he's banged up, he's hurt all the time. Ian, last year he played 76 of 82 games.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like this, he's had some concerns, but he's 7 feet tall. Like shit like that is going to happen. All right. He's not a model, like he's not an Iron Man, but I don't think we're looking at a guy that's like withering away. And you always said it, like guys don't get healthier, but I think he's been able to kind of learn how to manage it a little bit. You don't miss as many games as you have. And listen, he was pretty healthy during his New Orleans days, right? it's just weird. He gets banged up a little bit here. Played 76 games last year as a 30-year-old 7-footer, and this year he's played in the majority of the games, and he's still top 10 in points and rebounds. So I don't like when everybody's acting like Anthony Davis sucks or he's like some relic that's 37, 38 years old. Like, he's 10 years younger than LeBron. Like, it's crazy to think like that people are looking at this deal like it's so one-sided. Like, I like this deal for Dallas. I think you open up for Kyrie. I'd rather have Kyrie with the ball in his hands at the end of the game with, he's going to make the right. He's got a championship pedigree. You got Klay Thompson. You put a little bit more on him. You got a bunch of athletes now. And people forget Anthony Davis, when they won the championship in 2020, they had Dwight Howard there. So he could play with another big. Anthony Davis is one of those rare big guys that can play by himself and play with another big. They have Gafford. They have Derek Lively. Like, I think this is a much better deal for Dallas than people are leading on. They're caught in the headlights, just like you and I always talk about. These people get caught with the glitz and glamour, like, oh, it's the Luka thing. But at the end of the day, the meat and the potatoes, people don't like to talk about that, but that's real.
Well, I don't think Luka and Kyrie really fit. That doesn't really fit in the puzzle for me. And what with Anthony Davis now, okay, Kyrie and him, if he could be healthy for a couple, 3 years, if they form any kind of a bond together, you never know. You never know. I mean, talent-wise, they're Kobe and Shaq, okay? So, I heard at this moment, everybody was like, well, they could have got so much more for the trade. You know what they did? I think Anthony Davis is who they wanted.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of Anthony Davis. There's not a lot of them out there. There isn't. And you talk about a piece, he could be that piece. And I think he's that guy. When he goes down, we always go, oh, here we go. But even if he comes back and plays, I think we still think he's hurt. You know what I mean? Like, when he falls, it seems like he's getting hurt all the time. So I think he gets credit for being hurt more than he actually is.
That's 100% well said. He doesn't miss as much time as people think he does.
Nope.
He really doesn't. And this is a guy that can shoot. Ian, this is an NBA champion. He's a 10-time All-Star.
Yeah.
This is a guy that's a 10-time All-Star, 3-time NBA first-team defense, second-team blocks leader, All-NBA first-team, All-Star game MVP. This is a guy that was a great player in college. He's one of the few players in college as a freshman to be able to go out there. I mean, when you think about it, it's him and Carmelo, right? Carmelo was a baller as a freshman at Syracuse, led Jim Boeheim to his first and only championship. And he literally changed the game in college, where people say you can't win with freshmen. Well, here comes Anthony Davis and Michael K. Gilchrist and those guys for Coach Cal in Kentucky, and they waxed everybody. And there's a great story, and I'm going to tell you this. Coach Cal said one time there was a player that he coached that, and this is, I think, the main difference between Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic. In the first half of that national championship game, Anthony Davis wasn't hitting any shots, and he goes into the locker room at halftime, and he goes, I am not hitting my shots. You guys go do your thing. I am going to rebound every single shot. I'm going to block every shot. I'm going to do whatever it takes to help us win this game. And Coach Cal said that was Anthony Davis. If Luka's shot isn't falling in, what is he doing?
He ain't got nothing else.
Well, he's going to be moping, and he's going to be groaning.
Oh, yeah. Bitching and moaning and complaining and pointing fingers at other folks. That's what he's been.
And people look at it, and you know this too. People look at what happened last year, like, oh, they went to the final. Are they really going to be able to get back to the final with him and Kyrie, with him acting like that, with Oklahoma City looking as good as they are? People get caught up by that 1 year that a team does something great and thinks, oh, look at that. Sometimes you just get farther and farther away from that.
And I just don't think anybody ever knows how bad it is. I just don't. Like, there's times where things look rosy because all you see is what you see in the press.
Right.
There's times where I've been in locker rooms that were toxic. Like, I've been in locker rooms where the head coach and who was the offensive coordinator and the quarterback hated each other. The head coach and the star receiver hated each other. It was a toxic feel. It didn't feel good. And in that case, somebody's got to go. Unfortunately for the coach, he had to go. But sometimes somebody has to go.
Can it ever work like that?
Not ultimately, no. If you don't have respect,
I don't think so.
You don't have to like each other, okay? You don't have to like each other, but you have to respect each other. I didn't like everybody that I played with, but game day, we dapped each other up, pat each other in the butt. Let's go fight. We got to respect each other, but if there's no respect there, it can't work. There's no way, because there's got to be an understanding, because if the head coach and the quarterback, who's also the offensive coordinator over here, if they don't have good communication skills, there's no way that's ever going to work ultimately. No way.
And you could love each other, and it still might not be enough.
That's true.
Right? Think
That's
about
true.
that.
Yep.
You could love the guys that you're working with, and it
Yep.
still may not be good enough. You think those Buffalo Bills guys didn't get along? They loved Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed. Like, you know, to have that much success, right? Those guys seem to really care. And we're not in the locker room, but it just seemed like those guys really got along. And no matter what happened, they couldn't win any of those Super Bowls.
I bet they're closer than the teams that win.
Right?
I bet losing and crying on each other year after year, that's going to make it close. That's for sure.
Jeez. Yeah, you got that right, buddy. Well, great job as always, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. 4817 Southwest Shore Boulevard. Go check out In the Trenches. Who are you talking to this week?
We're taking a week off. We're getting all of our equipment back. You know, we've had some raggedy headphones and raggedy microphones. We had to purchase some new stuff. And we're going to come back. And I believe Tony Mayberry is going to be next up. So it should be interesting.
Beckles and Recher podcast this Wednesday over at the Dignitary Tea and Kava House. We'll record it then and put it out there. Appreciate your time, my brother. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Stay safe, brother.
One love. The great Ian Beckles, number 6'2". Yeah, I think it's important, too, when we have these conversations about professional athletes, is to remember that if you're not in there at all, you really have no idea. For somebody like myself who is in the locker room, I don't even have any idea. Right? Think about that, man. It's you only get the information that the team wants you to get. Are things going to trickle out? Are people going to control their own narrative because their own podcast? Yes. But as far as getting the entire story, it just doesn't happen like that. It doesn't. These teams, these PR teams for each of the clubs, they do such a great job of controlling things. And also, you just don't know. Like, there's in their monologue, there's stuff that these people think that they don't articulate. They don't let you know how they really feel about a coach, about a player, about the organization as a whole. This deal between the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Lakers is one of those that is going to be examined for the better part of the next 2 decades. Why did it happen? What is the aftermath of this? What is the short-term success? What is the long-term success? What happens to the draft picks? What happens to the third team involved? What happens to the other players outside of Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis? It's fascinating, though, when you see player movement like this. I love trades. I love it because it keeps everybody on their edge of their toes. I think it's a focus on the business aspect of the sport that we all love and know, regardless of what sport it is. But you also understand that as a general manager, and I'm going to get into this here in a bit, your job as the general manager is to use every single resource you have to make your team successful. And that's one thing that I've been able to glean from Julien Brisebois over these last couple of years during his fireside chats. When we ask him, are you going to make a move around the trade deadline? Are you having conversations with other teams, trying to find ways to bring players in or send players out to make your team better? And the one constant message that we get from JBB is that it's not about the trade deadline. It's about 365 days a year trying to find a way to make this team better. And it may sound cliche, and it may not be the exact answer that you want to hear when you pose that question. But in reality, he's telling the truth. Because the best move for the team may not be a trade at the doorstep of the trade deadline. It may be letting a guy go. It may be calling a guy up from the minors. It may be signing a guy to an extension to free up some cap space for player A, player B, player Z. You just don't know. But for some of these coaches out there, and I forget recently somebody, I think it was Shad Khan talking about the Jaguars. We'll worry about that later on. As a general manager and as somebody that's in charge, you need to be worried about this thing all year long. Julien Brisebois is always watching these games and watching other games and traveling to try to make the Lightning better. If that is not your thought process, you are going to be lagging behind. And eventually, you're probably going to be without a job because you have to use every single day, every single minute, every single second when you're in that position to make sure that your eyes are open, your ears are open, and you're trying to find a way to take your team to the next level. Because if you're not improving, you're getting worse, and other teams are going to step above you. All right, let's bring him in. The historian, the almanac of Tampa Bay sports. You hear him on USF broadcast, whether it's men's basketball or football, and the recent recipient of the Tom McEwen Award at the Sneaker Soiree on Friday night on behalf of the Tampa Bay Sports Commission. It's the one and only Joey Johnston. Joey, thanks so much for joining us, man. How is your Monday going?
It's going great, Jay. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to hanging out with you a bit.
Yeah, we always have a great time talking about, I mean, listen, there's no limit to what you and I talk about when it comes to sports, and it doesn't have to be current sports either. We can go back into the annals of history.
Preferably not.
I know you and I love our history. But yeah, I wanted to ask you kind of to piggyback over the conversation I just had. I saw you there waiting in the lobby with Ian. Just the relationship with players when you're talking to them, whether it's in the locker room, as much as, and you do such a great job, so eloquent and articulate, and how you've written stories over the years. But Joey, there's another side of this, like whether it's them as human beings or then things that happen, even if we're there all the time, that we'll never be privy to because we're not in that locker room. We're not members of the team.
Right. I've always felt like you never feel like you truly know what's going on. I mean, you think you do, but you don't. I mean, I think if you're there a lot, if you're there every day over the course of a year, you're probably going to have a better chance of being closer to the truth than not. But yeah, it's like anything. You read and watch these guys, and you feel like you know them, and I know that's how fans think, but you really don't. You don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what their family situation is. I mean, there's a million layers to the whole thing. So it's really easy to slice and dice these athletes and put them in boxes and say, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, this is the leader, this is the malcontent. But, there's a lot that goes into it. And again, like someone like yourself who's there every night or every day in a clubhouse or in a locker room, you get closer to it, and maybe you get to the point where you get trust and they can let you in a little bit more. But, to make these sweeping judgments based on one thing is always dangerous. I've always, one thing I always remember is, this is years ago, when Cal Ripken was playing for the Orioles and they were coming in for the Rays, and it might've been maybe his last season. So it was like the summer of love. Everywhere he was going, he was getting, roses thrown at his feet. And, he's a good guy. He will accommodate fans. He will sign autographs. And I kind of wrote like a column about, hey man, this guy he's so good with fans. He's a wonderful guy. He really is a great ambassador for the game. And, the next day somebody emailed me, says, hey, Cal Ripken stiffed me for an autograph. And I go, there's always one possibility. And it's like, that's why sometimes I know we see it in baseball where guys are coming in and out of the dugout and people are screaming for their autographs, and they give 10, but number 11 is mad because they didn't get the autograph. So there's always more to the story than we see.
Yeah, and I think personal experience too. Like I always bring up Warren Sapp, and there's a lot of stories of people saying all these, terrible things about Warren. I had an awful experience, this and that. But Joey, every single time I'm around Warren, he always says hello. He always gives me a hug. Like we always dap each other up. Like he's always asking how the family is. Like it's different, right? It's also, there's also a personal attachment to it. And I know you want to keep that apart from whatever you're writing and reporting on, but that does influence a little bit of like you seeing guys from different aspects and different vantage points, because you may be writing about something, but it's the story that you're telling. And I wanted to ask you, how have you been able to balance that out throughout the years when you have a guy and you're trying to write a story, but you have to find that balance. And the reason why I bring this up is because I feel like, and I've had this conversation with the late great friend of ours, Marty Fennelly, and also Tom Jones, of like, as a columnist, you want to be able to give your opinion, but I always said, well, like, why don't you want to see them win? Well, it's not my job to, want them to win. I'm like, yeah, but you're around them all the time. Yeah, but that's going to influence my opinion. But I also think the other side too, like if you don't really care, then you're not using the emotion that you have as a sports fan that try to make you look at things from a different perspective, because you're not allowing yourself to go there. I can see your perspective, but I want you to be able to see this perspective. I think you could still be honest and tell a story and still want teams to win. I'm very critical. I'm as critical as anybody of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know if many people want to see him more win than I do, but if something happens like last year and I said Sergachev was playing like dog crap, right? Like just, I don't think that was an opinion. I thought it was a fact, but I'm not going to not critique them just because I've done work with them and I want to see them win. Where do you fall into that whole thing when you're trying to write a story, but the old kind of journalistic integrity of like, we don't want to get too emotional. We don't want to, have like a quote unquote rooting interest.
Yeah, I think it's just, number one, you got to be professional. Number two, you got to be there as often as you can, if not every day. Mm-hmm. And then over time, obviously the people, people that you like in life, you want them to succeed. You want them to do well. So that's a normal human emotion. I mean, I certainly, been through a lot of losing seasons through the years of coverage with the Bucks and the Lightning and certainly the Rays. But man, what are my memories? I mean, the Bucks winning the Super Bowl, the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup, the Rays going to the World Series. I mean, those are the things that you remember and you cherish. So there's a balance. There's always a balance, and you're never going to get it perfectly right. But you just have to be yourself, show up every day, be honest, do the ebbs and flows of life like we all do in all situations, and it comes out in the wash. I mean, I will definitely say, I think back before I became a journalist, I was a Bucks season ticket holder, but I was more of a stoic watcher of the game. I wasn't one of those guys that painted my face or jumped up and down. I didn't get too high or too low over most things. I thought I had a pretty reasoned approach. Wasn't jumping off a bridge if some things were going bad or going crazy if they were going good. And I learned quickly that you're in the press box, you're there to do a job, you're there to be professional and to watch it and analyze it. And I've always felt like my job is to give the emotions of the people and get to know the people and tell fans things they don't know. I might not be the best at X's and O's or breaking down strategy. And frankly, that's not my forte. It's more like, what makes this person tick?
Right.
Tell me something interesting about this for that. And then that's the thing I want to read. So that's the thing I want to write. But certainly we've seen it in press boxes where it's a little bit over the top for certain people.
Right.
Not the most professional manner. Mm-hmm. But again, and that's, really, what I admire about you is you show up every day, and there is absolutely something to be said for that. And players know you're there every day. They respect that. And so if you do that, then I think it gives you a forum to kind of, criticize, praise, whatever, because you're as close to the deal as you possibly can be.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, man. It means a lot coming from somebody like yourself. And people have asked me that, like, why do you do this? Why do you go to the games? And I don't know if I think I've said it here on the podcast before. Like, I wasn't part of my job when I became a host was not to go to games. That wasn't part of my job title. My job was to host. That was it. The fact that I continued to go to USF football games and continued to go to Bucks games and Lightning games, that was my prerogative. That was my way that I thought that I was going to do my job the best. Yeah, I mean, does it take away my free time and time away from family and friends? Yeah, but I feel like if I'm going to do the job to the best of my ability, I need to talk to Alex Golish after the Alabama game. I need to be there and hear what Tom Brady has to say in his final press conference. I need to find out what Steven Stamkos and Nikita Kucherov and Marty St. Louis, I need to find out what makes those guys tick. And even just having a normal conversation with Braden Point walking into the arena the other night. Like, you don't get that without going the extra mile. And not everybody's like that, Joey. And I know you know that too, man, but you got to be willing to show up a little early, stay a little bit later, put yourself in an awkward position, and to kind of find a way to connect with your audience. And that's why I know it meant so much to you to win the Tom McEwen Award Friday night at the Sneaker Soiree, because he was a guy that, my goodness, there's two people that I really wish I was able to meet that passed before I was working in the industry. And one was Chris Thomas from WDA, and the other one was Tom McEwen, because I've always tried to be one of those conduits between the listeners and the viewers, the fans, and our sports teams, and somebody that tries to connect people. I think being a connector is something that I was put on this earth to do. And Tom McEwen, I know, is such a mentor to you and a lot of the writers here in this town. What did that mean when you got that initial call that you were going to win this award?
Oh, it was really cool. It meant a tremendous amount because, Tom is really the first word in sports around here for me and always will be.
Right.
And I know time has passed. It's been almost 14 years since he has died. And, so like anything, time passes and Tom McEwen becomes just a name to some people. They're not really sure who he is, who he was.
Right.
But let me tell you, nothing got done in Tampa Bay area sports around here without Tom McEwen's approval. Nothing. Everybody knew that. And if you were an athlete of any repute, pro, college, high school, little league, whatever, and Tom McEwen wrote about you, you had validation.
Right.
You can ask a Buck, you can ask a USF player, a Gator player, a professional baseball player that came here for spring training. If Tom McEwen approached them to write about them, that was the stamp of approval. And there's really no replication of that in today's market, today's sports world here. He was one of a kind, and he was not only a writer, but he was a mover and a shaker. He truly was a guy that without his help and without his push, maybe we don't get the NFL here at the time we do. Maybe we don't get the Super Bowls. Maybe we don't get baseball or hockey or USF football or USF basketball, for that matter, going back to then. He was a guy that cared a lot about bringing sports to this community and bringing the best of whatever sports had to offer. And he used his column and his influence for that effect. You would go to a Bucks game, let's say in the 1980s, and we're all there. And of course, everybody's around the buffet, hanging out, telling stories. And hey, where's Tom? Well, Tom's on the field talking to the owners. Tom's up in the luxury box talking to the commissioner of the NFL. I mean, that's the world that he lived in. But at the same time, he was a guy back, when I started and I was in charge of covering high school sports. He wanted me to keep him up to date with what was going on. And if there was somebody that who deserved a column or something, he wanted to do it. And there just weren't many people of his stature and his influence that walked in those high level corridors that would also care enough to write about the high school athlete or the amateur athlete or the people in Tampa who are making a difference. But man, he did it. He wrote every day and he showed up every day. I remember back in the day, one of the first things I remember him talking about was, John McKay was the coach of the Bucks. And for the most part, McEwen and McKay were quite a team. They got along. They were like Burns and Allen or something. And, but as is the case, Tom has to be critical. And there were a lot of times when the Bucks deserved some criticism, but he always said, hey, when I'm in there taking shots at Coach McKay or whatever, the game didn't go well, I've been a little harsh. The next morning, where am I? I'm in his office or I'm at his press conference, looking him in the eye, because that's important. Right. That's the way you earn respect. You take your shots and then you go present yourself before that person. And if there's anything to be said, it's said between you. And if there's a dispute, you settle it and then you move on. And there were some harsh times between McKay and McEwen, especially toward the end, but they mended their fences and they were, best of friends when they both passed. But that was something I learned was, when you write something or you say something, you don't hide, behind it. You put yourself out there, preferably in person if you can. That makes a big difference. So that was really the influence of Tom McEwen for me, is just that personal touch and that ability to kind of do what you can to help the community grow in sports. And I truly believe, what we did the other night with with this sneaker soiree and other events where everybody gathers and all the franchises are there. These moments, it wouldn't happen without Tom McEwen, with what he did way back in the day. And that's, some people of the younger generation may have zero idea about that because it just doesn't work that same way. But man, Tom McEwen is on the short list of people in Tampa who have made this place into what it is. I mean, the short list.
Right. And I just think that Tom was looking down at you and beaming with pride, and then looking at Rob Higgins and Sarah Walsh and John Cooper and Titus O'Neil, and just looking at all the people involved and going, man, that's like the fruits of his labor. Right. And he's got to be.
He would have loved to have been there.
He would have loved to have been there. And yeah, you mentioned like people like, that's how I hope my podcast to be, is something that, people are like, wow, I'm getting a chance to go on the J Recher podcast. Like, yeah. I strive for that to be. I think there's that exclusivity of it's something special. And my affinity when it comes to local and high school sports, and just trying to make sure that we're looking out for those guys, and to have that foresight, to have that, just Tom realizing that this was such an incredible breeding ground for the phenomenal athletes that we see playing professionally. I mean, we still see it. Like, it's not going to stop. I mean, I look at Doug Wechter, his son Caden, like, he's destined for great things now too, right? Like, it's just amazing. You pull up the tape, you see so many talented people here in the Tampa Bay area, and it's very exciting to see kind of what the future holds. I want to ask you a little bit about USF and another part of the sneaker soiree, which not a dry eye in the house, is when the Abdur-Rahim family was honored. Fortunately, we lost Coach Amir. It still doesn't seem real. I got a chance to meet Amir's wife. Coach Ben Fletcher introduced me to Amir's wife, Ari, and it's just what a pillar of strength that lady is. And just to hear her speak 99 days on Friday night, now 102 days without her husband. I mean, you knew him, you talked to him, and we've talked about him, off air. And I got a chance to know him and be the first interview when he got hired here, and just it's still hard to believe that he's gone, because he made such a profound impact in just 1 year. I have this picture right here. It's never coming down. How has the team, how's Coach Ben Fletcher, how has everybody around the program been able to kind of, I don't know if getting through it is the right term, Joey, but how have you guys, you're part of this too, you and our good buddy, Jim Lighthall, like, how have you been able to cope and still be able to kind of put your best foot forward for the 24-25 season?
Well, the one thing about grief in all its forms, when you lose somebody in your family or somebody close, it comes at you in waves, and no day is the same. You're up, you're down, you're in the middle. It hits you at unexpected times, unexpected places. There's some days when you smile at a memory. There's some days when you cry at a memory. That's just the way it is. And when I think back at what this team has gone through, particularly with the timing of it, right before the season, them going to two very large memorial services, really having their preparation and practices disrupted, then almost immediately having to go to Jacksonville to play the Florida Gators and leading by 13 points in the first half. Eventually Florida wins. Florida might be a Final Four team. This team has played a ton of great opponents, some ups and downs. They're certainly maybe at a downtime right now. They lost considerably yesterday in Boca Raton to Florida Atlantic, but basketball is a season of ebbs and flows. It comes and goes. They've had injuries and illnesses, and they've dealt with the loss of their coach. I think it's almost hard to really accurately describe the whole thing until it's over, until the season's over, when you can really understand what it is, because it hits you at different times. But the one thing for sure is these guys, all 18 to 22, 23 years old, have certainly gotten a great lesson about real life at an early age, about how to move forward when you don't feel like moving forward. there are some people who might look at this team and say, man, they're underachieving. They're not playing well. And to some degree that's true, but there's another side of it where you have to say, my gosh, they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
They are playing this season under everything that has happened. And again, the final chapters have not been written. What happens in November and December is often very different than what happens in March. So let's see what happens with this team. There's still plenty of season left to go. The other thing about, regardless of Coach Amir being here or not being here, is they lost 3 incredible players last year that transferred out, and that was always going to be a factor with this team in terms of leadership and talent on the court. There's not really a Chris Youngblood type on this team. Case and Pryor, Sultan Miguel, all have gone on to Division I teams. Case and Pryor, unfortunately, is out for the season with an injury.
So sad.
But there's a lot of adjustments here, a lot of moving parts. There have been times when this team looks really, really good, and there's been times when it does not look good at all. But one thing I will say is they are playing hard. They are playing for their coach. They are playing for the memory of their fallen coach. And I do believe that what they have done by the end of this season will be something to be admired. We'll see if it adds up to the kind of results that they want or other people want. But the fact that they've done this is in a way, I don't know if underappreciated is the word, but you become numb to it and you move on, and you have to really wrap your head around what's actually going on here, what they're doing. It's team adversity, one thing after the other. The other night they were playing Rice, and their big man Jameel Reynolds was out with an illness. Another 7-footer, Daniel Tobaloba, had a foot injury. So they were playing Deontay Green at the 5 position, the interior. He's 6'9", a little slender, but 6'9". Mm-hmm. 5 minutes into the game, he suffers what looks like it's going to be a season-ending injury. So their tallest player is 6'6", and Rice has 2 6'10" players that they start. So it's like, oh my goodness. And the USF is trailing by 14 in the first half of this game. So it is looking ugly. Well, USF rallied to win that game with that undersized lineup. And again, it's a dot in the season. It's something that may not be remembered, but boy, what an effort it was that night. Now, didn't replicate itself yesterday against Florida Atlantic, who shot the ball like crazy. But you move on. You play Temple on Thursday. You got Memphis coming in next week. Again, a lot of season left to play, but it's one foot in front of the other. And these guys, these young guys who maybe have not experienced anything like this in their lives, are having to deal with it. And, certainly they have gotten an indication of real life and what it means to keep moving forward at a terrible time.
Yeah, 11-11 on the season, 4-5 in conference, and then Thursday night is going to be really special. I was just mentioning it earlier on the show, Joey. It is going to be a night to remember Amir Abdur-Rahim, the AAC honoring the entire legacy of AAR. It's the Love Wins Whiteout. It's going to be on ESPN2 at the Yuengling Center at 7 p.m. against Temple. It's going to be incredibly memorable for the fact, one of the reasons is that Tom Crean is going to be on the call, one of the mentors of Amir Abdur-Rahim, as well as a guy that you and I know really well, Rich Hollenberg, who does Big 12 basketball, not really the American, but the fact that he's going to be here doing a midweek game is going to be an incredibly emotional night Thursday night.
Yeah, for sure. The American Athletic Conference is naming Coach Amir Abdur-Rahim as the honorary coach of the year. And he's going to be remembered always as the person attached to that award that he won last year. And of course, he immediately took the plaque off the trophy, Coach of the Year, and replaced it with Staff of the Year. That really happened. The thing about Coach Amir is, we only had one season with him, but it was a remarkable season, a championship season. That will be our memory forever of this incredible soaring achievement, how he took over this community, everything he brought to the community. That will always be our image of him. The student section was renamed the Coach Amir Abdul-Rahim student section. So he will be much like Leroy Selman in a way on the USF campus, remembered always as this revered, beyond reproach person that stands for the highest quality as a person and as a leader. That will always be our image of Coach Amir. So yeah, Thursday night will be really, really special. Another chance to remember him with his family aboard and his players there. And what a wonderful thing the conference is doing to remember him in this way. And we will see. We'll see what Thursday brings, but another chance for USF to get a great home crowd and a great home atmosphere. And again, long way to go to March. But I will say I admire these guys a lot for their ability to keep working, because they've been hit in the back of the head with something that none of us ever want to deal with. And these are young guys, and they've had to deal with it and deal with it in their own way. But these kids are champs, and they're trudging along, and they're continuing to do things that are making a lot of us very proud of them.
Go usfbulls.com for all the information on scheduling. Joey's got a great article right now about celebrating the baseball season and baseball, softball. I'll be on the call for
years of baseball.
Yeah, 16 years of baseball. Players and coaches, go check that out right now. Go usfbulls.com. I'm actually going to be on the call on Friday for USF softball against Michigan.
Nice.
So that should be fun. And then baseball a bunch of times throughout the entire
year. We're really happy to have you, man. That's so awesome that you can be a part of the Stick and Ball broadcast crew. Looking forward to hearing you, man, because you know what you're talking about. So you're gonna help educate us all, man.
Thank you, my friend. And also, I let everybody know before Thursday, Lightning game, USF game. I will not be at Amalie Arena. I will actually be on Thursday at the Angling Center for that basketball game. I wouldn't miss it for the world. So I'll definitely catch up with you there. Go follow him on all social media platforms. Joey Johnston 813. We are so lucky to have somebody like Joey telling the story of our wonderful community, talking all things sports. Joey, appreciate the time, appreciate your friendship, your mentorship, and you're the best, man. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you Thursday night.
You bet, Jay. Thank you for doing this podcast. I look forward to it, and I urge everybody in Tampa Bay to follow your podcast, because you're one of the good guys. You know what you're talking about, and chance to learn a little bit more about sports. The Jay Recher podcast. I tell everybody I know to tune in. So good luck to you.
Thanks, pal. Talk to you soon.
All right.
See ya. Good stuff there, Joey Johnston. Again, anything happens in Tampa sports, not just now, not just 5, 10, 15, ever. Joey Johnston's that guy. Oh man, we'll talk next time we have him on. But I remember years ago, it was during one of the Outback Bowl press conferences, and we were talking to the coach, and it was just amazing, just the ability to recall some of the things that he's been able to just experience over the years, and a lot of great information about Tom McEwen. He's a guy that I really, really wish I was able to meet and to be able to talk to, because a lot of the things that he prioritized being involved with sports here in the Tampa Bay area, I'm that same way, man. I try to be a connector. I try to bring people together. I try to bring, just look at my backgrounds, right? Like, I mean, and I'm not talking about like my genealogy my biology background or anything. I'm talking about behind me here with, it's no joke, like Lightning, Rowdies, Bucks, Sun, Rays, USF, UT. I got my TC and my Jesuit hat over here too. Like, it is so important to be able to highlight our unique area. And we mentioned this as we were hanging out after the sneaker soiree the other night, about how we're such a burgeoning, growing big city, but we're also a place that has such an incredible small town feel, where people can tell you about going to the West Tampa, growing up in West Tampa, getting café con leche, going to Arcoides for lunch every Tuesday, right? There's just, everybody's got a story like that. If you're from here, like, you'll have a lot of people that move from other parts of the country to be here in Tampa, but you also have those Tampanians, those lifers, those 3rd, 4th generations, the Lou Maggios of the world, that they've been everywhere, right? Like, they've seen everything. They were here before the Rays. They were here before the Lightning. They were here before the Bucks. Like, and it's just so crazy to see how our city has grown and how our sports teams have grown over the years. So it's a great accomplishment, and it's something that I don't take very lightly when it comes to being a part of it. And also trying to find any way to be able to give back. I'm going to start doing something here in the next week or two, highlighting some of the local high schools, some of the prep stars as well. Because I think that's another big avenue for baseball, softball, all these different sports throughout the entire year. Carry it through the summer for maybe some of our travel athletes as well, and then going back into the fall with, with football and basketball and soccer and everything like that. That is what we do here on the Jay Recher podcast. And we also have more phenomenal guests. Next up, our guy Bailey Adams from Pewter Report. He finished up his travels to Chicago. He's traveling all over the world. Now he's back. He's focused on the Bucks and all things NFL. What's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? It's good to just be home for once. There was probably an 8 or 9 day stretch there where I think I had 1 day back home. So
where'd you go? Tell us, everybody, because I saw you went to Wrigley, right?
Yeah. So I went to Chicago. Just personal fun trip. Never been before. Loved it there. Very cold. Not used to that being from Tampa. But was able to be there for the Lightning game that Friday night, the overtime win. Made it home on Saturday, had Sunday at home, and then Monday we hit the road to Mobile for the Senior Bowl. So, I guess well-traveled over the last couple of weeks.
What's the one thing that stood out to you about the Senior Bowl? One player, one thing pertaining to the Bucks?
This is a good edge class. I think there were quite a few pass rushers there. I mean, obviously it was, lauded as one of the most stacked, most talented Senior Bowl rosters ever going into it. I think, that might have been a little overblown, just, kind of disappointed at some other positions. But overall, I mean, a lot of talented players there. We saw a lot of really good edge rushers. Marshall's Mike Green was really, really good. Boston College's Donovan Ezeraku is another one. And then a guy who I didn't know anything about going in was UCLA's Femi Oladejo, who was really, really impressive there. So good little group there if the Bucks want to go that direction in the first or second round.
We see the big news just a couple hours ago, Bailey, with Myles Garrett saying that he wants out of Cleveland. And I know you guys have a story up on Pewter Report about going to get Trey Hendrickson. I was bringing up Max Crosby's name a couple of weeks ago. As much as you want to try to build through the draft, I mean, it's just difficult. The Buccaneers have had a rough time being able to build with that position through the draft, whether it's a JTS, whether it's even though Yaya did a good job, like, I don't know if he's going to ever be like a top tier 15, 20 sack guy. Chris Braswell, I don't think made a huge impact this year either. So sometimes you got to be able to go out and make a trade or sign a guy in free agency. What do you think is the realistic possibility that Myles Garrett somehow, some way finds his way in a Buccaneer uniform next year?
I don't know. The likelihood I'm still fuzzy on, because there are going to be a very robust market for him. It'll all depend on the price. I think if it's something they look into, it's definitely an avenue they can explore. I think, with the way that they've kind of paid things off after the Super Bowl years, I think the cap is in a better spot now. And obviously Josh Capo, our guy, is much better to talk to about the cap ramifications of that. And he'll have something up here shortly on Myles Garrett. But yeah, I think between that and between trading for a guy like Trey Hendrickson, who's a little older, who is going to be in a little bit different of a spot, either way, I agree with you. I think they've got to go out and make a move here. And we saw Jason Light do it with Jason Pierre-Paul back in, I believe, 2018, 2017, and how much that helped for a few years, and even obviously the Super Bowl year too. So I like Yaya Diaby. I don't know if he is a top guy right now. And if they can go and pull off a move for a Hendrickson or for a Garrett and then pair him with Yaya, as Yaya being the number 2, I think they'll be in great shape.
Yeah, I'm really pushing for that, because I think you make a move like that, you're really putting your flag into the ground going, hey, we're a serious team next year. Our offense is going to be flying. Defense, I just think getting an elite pass rusher like Myles Garrett makes everybody around you better. It slots everybody in the pass rush where they need to be. Yaya as a primo number 2. Then you have your backup guys, whether it's an Anthony Nelson, whether it's a Chris Braswell, where they can rotate in, right, and do their thing that way. And then I think it helps the corners. Regardless of whether a guy like Jamel Dean comes back or not, Zion McCollum and the rest of the crew, like, you don't have to cover guys as much, because you can't, because Myles Garrett is winning those battles on the outside. And then let's say you double him, now you're opening things up for guys like Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey in the middle. If you can get it done, I know he's on this deal for a couple more years, but I just think I don't care what draft picks it takes. If you're going to be good, you're drafting 19 and up anyway. Those guys probably aren't going to be as good as Myles Garrett. So what is it? It's just, right? Like you look at some of these moves that they've made the last couple of years. Like I'm one of those people. I don't hate Logan Hall. I think he's got a reason. Like he's like the new age William Golston to me, right? A guy that can set the edge, not going to get 10 sacks, but seems like a great guy and a huge dude. I mean, look, Kyle Trask, you look at Kyle Trask, you look at Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, like those are two guys, first 2-round picks. It's just like you didn't really get much out of any of those guys. Like if you're telling me you're going to trade 2 first-round picks and they're going to end up between 19 and 30 or something like that, and you're going to get rid of them to get Myles Garrett, it just makes too much sense to me. Yeah,
and I think I'm kind of a little busy today, but what I've seen at first glance is it might not even be one of those where it takes 2 first-rounders. I think I saw one source come out and say it was maybe going to be a first and then a first plus. So there will be maybe a couple third-rounders or a first and maybe a player, something like that. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong to really say just pull the trigger on whatever it's going to take. The curiosity I have obviously is going to be how many teams are involved in this, because then the price could become a bidding war. And I don't know, there comes to a certain point where I don't think you can just do whatever it takes, but they've definitely got to explore that avenue, whether it's that Max Crosby, like you mentioned, or Trey Hendrickson. Getting that top guy can really transform the defense, like you said.
What do you think of the possibilities of Chris Godwin returning next season?
I think he'll be back. I don't buy all of the, once Liam Cohen left, people were saying, oh, Jacksonville's going to take him. He performed really well in that offense for, the 7 games that he was healthy for, but I don't think there's any sort of pull there. I think the Bucs are just going to get it done. And I don't think this is even going to be, I don't know if this even goes down to the wire the way Mike Evans felt like he was going to, which I know by the end, Mike was saying I was always going to come back and I never wanted to leave. So I think Chris Godwin stays, and I think they get that done.
What now? The big, $1 million question. Your thoughts on the new offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I know you guys were on the Grizzard train for a while over there and keeping an eye out for him. Nick Caley was the guy that I liked from the Rams, but if you're going to keep it in house, got a young kid, smart as hell, and we hear from Baker over the weekend that he was, pretty integral in the game plans pretty much every week. I like this move for the Bucs, and here's the other thing, Bailey. I like that they got it done quickly. I like that they didn't have to go out and go through multiple rounds of interviews, and it wasn't here's my 17th best choice for OC. Yeah. Like this is a guy that was in house. There was nobody surprised, and I think for the first time in the last couple of years, and I've said this for the last couple of weeks, if Liam Cohen were to go, they're in a better position than they were when they needed to hire him, when they needed to hire Dave Canales, because people know what it entails. You have a quarterback in place. So just your overall thoughts on Grizzard and what this offense could look like next year, similarly or dissimilar?
I think there will be a lot of similarities. I think obviously he'll have his own spin on things, but I think it's, like you mentioned with the speed of all of it, I'm happy just from, I think both from a timeline standpoint and from a coverage standpoint, not having to write up, 10 other interviews that they did. Because I think last year might have been 10 to 12 candidates, same thing with the year before. So it's nice that they were able to go out and kind of, I say cast a wide net, but they were going after a specific type of candidate. It was clear, young, innovative, and 3 of the 6 external guys were Rams assistants. They talked to all those guys, then they say, okay, let's give our interview to the in-house guy. I think there was always part of them that was going to go this way with Grizzard because of the familiarity he has with not just the quarterback position, but obviously as a guy working with, as the passing game coordinator, he's working with all facets of the pass game. So that's pretty much the whole offense. He was in charge of their third down packages, and they were first in the league in third downs. He's worked with, like I mentioned, quarterbacks, receivers, running backs over the course of his career. And he's young. He's young, and he's got exposure to a variety of systems. So I think this is something that obviously he's never called plays before, but I think we saw it with Dave Canales. We saw to an extent with Liam Cohen picking it up quickly. And I hope for them that they have kind of an easy transition because it is an in-house guy with a lot of familiarity and a lot of the similar, maybe it's going to be different terminology, but it will be a lot of the same, I think, concepts.
I know you being a Rays fan with that hat on, just got some news 3 minutes ago that the Rays made a trade, bringing in right-hander Alex Faedo from the Detroit Tigers.
Wow.
And Alex, who a lot of people know because he's from Tampa, his dad, the head coach of the Alonzo Ravens, went to the same school as the late great Jose Fernandez, minor league catcher Anderson Delgado, and Cash going the other way. Alex Faedo, also a national champion with the Florida Gators. This is a big, big deal here locally. I am definitely going to try to do whatever it takes to get his ass on the show, even if I got to call his dad, Bailey.
Yeah.
I'm calling Lonnie. You better get Alex on the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what do you think about the Rays? You're a Rays guy, like excited for this year. I mean, this is the most unique season I think that we're ever going to see.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time grasping that I'm not going to be going to Tropicana Field 25 to 30 times this year. Like every time I think of this upcoming season, I'm like, oh, I can't wait. And I'm like, I got to remind myself that it's going to be way different. But as far as the team itself, I'm very, very high on the potential. Obviously, they're doing the Rays thing, right, where they have some holes, but they feel like they're going to bet internally on the guys they have to step up, like Josh Lowe bouncing back. I think they made the moves they made at catcher and at shortstop. I'm a big fan of. I think the pitching staff's going to be great. So yeah, no, I'm excited about it. And I think they're kind of back to being that under the radar, like people are going to count them out, but I think they might be right up there atop, near the top of the AL East.
Yeah. I think when you focus on the pitching and the defense, that's their bread and butter. I think that's important, but don't trade. I saw something with Yandy Diaz. Mm-hmm. Let's keep him here. Brandon Lau, like the other guys have to step up, like offensively. I want to see Josh Lowe. This guy's got all the tools, right, to be able to go out there and to contribute the game. He's a great base stealer for a big dude, which you don't always see. He hits for average, he hits for power, and you never know. A guy like that playing in a park that have the Yankees dimension with the short porch and right field, you might see Josh Lowe hit 40 bombs this year, man. It's pretty crazy how that whole thing works out. Back to the Bucks, just where do you think they're going to look when it comes to the draft? If there's an order, like at their spot, is it going to be a pass rusher? Because that's the other thing. We were just talking about Myles Garrett. I want them to throw resources at it, but if a guy's not going to contribute right off the rip, if he's not going to be better, like if they go out and get a middle linebacker, right? Mm-hmm. And he's going to start right off the bat, I'm like, okay, cool. But if you're going to get a guy, like you just look at the last couple and you look at the first round picks, like Kalijah and you look at Graham Barton, it's like plug and play. I know there is some competition, whatever, but they're going to play. They're going to start week one. I worry if they get a pass rusher, it may not be ready to start week one. I think they could probably go do they go corner? Do they go pass rusher? Do they go middle linebacker? Where do you think they're leaning when it comes to that selection?
The answer will change within the next month or so with free agency coming up, and depending on if they do make a move for an edge rusher or if they do part ways with Jamel Dean. I think right now, obviously, Jamel is still on the roster. I think, right now they'd probably lean pass rusher if there's one there that they're in love with. But I don't know. I say there's a couple of guys, not the strongest inside linebacker class, but it's obviously going to be a huge need regardless of if Levante David comes back or not. I think that might be maybe a second round need, but I would lean pass rusher right now. Obviously, if Jamel's gone, I think cornerback is definitely in play in the first round.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out because you're right. As much as everybody makes mock drafts right now, free agency pops up, trades pop up. You just never really know what's going to happen. What are we hearing anything for UCF? Give me some update on them. How is it optimistic over there? Is it kind of quiet, radio silent right now? What are we thinking?
It's pretty quiet because the funny thing is we're so used to with recruiting when Gus Malzahn was there. It was every time they got a recruit, he would tweet out his tweet. And Scott Frost still hasn't unlocked his Twitter account. I don't know if they're going to make him at this point. I think he's maybe keeping that private. And so we'll see. I was talking to my co-host from the Pegasus podcast the other day with our UCF coverage. I told him, he said to me, he was like, I'm like, these recruits that are committing are going under the radar. Like I'm not being informed of them anymore because they kind of just are tweeted out by somebody else. We don't get the big notification. So it is. It's kind of like,
matters? Do you think that matters? I mean, I was having this conversation with Joe Urso last week from UT, and they do like all these videos. They have like an entire like video team that follows their team, and he thinks it's important. And it's hard to argue with a guy national champion last year, but he thinks it's important for these young athletes to be able to see their coach and the university that they're going to play for have a presence online and with social media. Do you agree with that?
I do, yeah. I think it's important, especially, we would see it some of the ways, and maybe it's a little different now with Scott Frost, but with Gus Malzahn, you would see recruits talking about how much it meant to them or how crazy it was to, be able to take a picture with him and have, him have it tweeted out, all that stuff. But I think as long as the program or the official account kind of does that kind of graphic or that, that video, introductory video, I think as long as they have that kind of presence, that's going to be all right. But, it's kind of just a running thing now where it's like, it's so quiet over at UCF because we're not hearing from Scott Frost very much.
Yeah, I know. And you would think, like, with him being younger that he right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think at some point in Nebraska, he locked the account, and I think it's, I don't know what goes on behind there anymore, but that's we'll see if it's something where they take charge of it or not, if they let him keep it personal.
Before I let you go, man, give me your opinion, your 2 cents on the Royal Rumble from Saturday night.
Enjoyed it a lot. I'm excited about the kind of the shock ending. I know Jey Uso is probably one of the more over guys in the entire company right now, so it shouldn't be that shocking. But I think with the way it all played out, and as star-studded as that Rumble was, I was thinking it was going to be Punk, it was going to be Cena, maybe Drew. With Jey to win it, I loved it. I'm always, I think even earlier in the match, I told my friend, I was like, I kind of want one year to there just be an out of nowhere winner. And it was, I think it's funny I had said that about Jimmy Uso because the commentary was talking up Jimmy, and then Jey goes on and wins it. I loved that, especially with kind of the predictability of the Women's Royal Rumble.
Right.
I think that was predictable, and then for them to end the night with a kind of a shock ending, I loved it.
Yeah, I thought the balance. It's all about balance, right? The predictability, the unpredictability. The mayhem of the ladder match, the tag team match, I thought was going to be better, and I think it fell flat. It's tough. Like, I think people knew that was going to be the time to get the popcorn. So I think it was probably a lose-lose situation there. But I'm with you. And Triple H said it in the post night presser of, like, sometimes predictable is good. And when you have Charlotte Flair, like, there's not many people out there that could be on the shelf for that long, come back and believably win the Royal Rumble. I mean, she's a main event star. In my mind, she's maybe one of the best of all time, men or women. Like, she's a 14-time champion, and she's going to wrestle probably for another decade. And just announced today she got divorced from Andrade. So she's single, boys.
Oh.
So, I mean, I hit her up on Facebook. Not to date. I was trying to get her on the show, everybody. All right. And she left me on red, but hey, this is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
you gotta try.
You got to throw it out there, man. Bailey J. Adams 22 on Twitter /X. Go check out all the great work that he does on Pewter Report, pewterreport.com. Bailey, it's good to have you back here in the Bay Area, and I'll see you before we know it, man, at the next crazy outing here in Tampa Bay. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You got it, buddy. Bailey Adams doing fantastic over there at Pewter Report. I know he's got in the middle of a work day right now, so shout out to him. All right, let's get into the Royal Rumble right now. 2025 Royal Rumble started out with the Women's Royal Rumble, and the winner of the match was Charlotte Flair. No surprise there. It was my prediction. I also hit the prediction of Jordynne Grace being one of the more impressive, eye-catching people. Alexa Bliss coming back was huge. It was so great to see her. The message that she had for the Fiend on the back of her jacket. Now you kind of see what the storylines are looking like. She got thrown out by Liv Morgan, so it's probably going to be a little bit of a storyline between the Wyatt Six and the Judgment Day, even though they're on two different shows. How are they going to do that? We'll see. Seeing Jordynne Grace, now she's going to be a legit WWE superstar. I think she'll be on NXT because of who threw her out. Roxanne Perez crushed it, coming in at number 3 and lasting all the way until the end, getting thrown out by Charlotte Flair. It just shows that that they have a lot of hope and a lot of faith in the prodigy Roxanne Perez. Great to see Nikki Bella coming out at number 30. You can look, but you can't touch. She looked good. She looked good. I'm not trying to be weird. I'm just saying, as a wrestler, like, for somebody that hasn't gotten in there, is not wrestling every day, like, all her stuff, I was very impressed. Natalya, 18 years in the WWE, now comes out at number 18. She did a wonderful job. Man, I thought it was just a solid performance all the way around. I don't dislike the fact that somebody won that you kind of had an idea was going to win. Like, I have nothing wrong with that. Like, she is going to be in the main event regardless because she's that big of a name. She's one of the best of all time. And, you know, whether you want her to go up against Rhea, which I don't think is going to happen, I think her against Tiffany Stratton that's the match to make at the WrestleMania this year. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think you look at the next generation with Tiffany Stratton, and like, who else is she going to wrestle? I think that makes a lot of sense to me. So I'll go Tiffany Stratton against Charlotte Flair. No problems there. Tag team matches, I just said with Bayley, I think that left a lot to be desired. I like the Motor City Machine Guns, and I like DIY, but on this card, knowing that there was only really 4 quote unquote matches, I think a lot of people knew that this was going to be a little bit of a letdown match. So it just didn't have that same kind of pop. Great to see the Street Profits come in and do their thing. But at the end of the day, I just, it didn't do enough for me and everybody else. The championship match between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens was brutal. I mean, I haven't seen that many slams on a ladder, I think, ever. That was more than anything I've ever seen in AEW or New Japan or ECW going back in the day. It was just slam after slam after slam after slam on the ladder again and again and again and again. Oh my gosh. And the way that it ended too, with the Alabama slam on the outside, and the way KO just took that bump. Oh my God, man. There was just no way that it was nuts, man. Watching that, those guys put their bodies on the line. They're not going to be I can't imagine what those two guys are feeling like Sunday morning. Craziness. And then the men's Royal Rumble match. I love the way that they started. Rey Mysterio coming out at number 1, and then Penta Cero Miedo coming in at number 2. Unfortunately, Penta's feet both hit the ground, so a little bit of a snafu right there. But they stayed in. Penta was in for a while. I'd like to see him working with Roman Reigns too. I love that. You get the guys in. AJ Styles returning was great. You guys know, one of my favorite superstars of all time. But you look at all the star power in this match. When you look at Drew McIntyre, and you look at LA Knight and AJ Styles and Roman Reigns and CM Punk and John Cena and Jey Uso and Logan Paul and Jacob Fatu, like, there were some huge names in this match. And when it got down to kind of the last 6, you were looking around like, all right, well, pretty much everybody's pick is in the match still. And then you see Rollins and Reigns get thrown out by CM Punk. And then you see Logan Paul get thrown out by then you see CM Punk get thrown out by Logan Paul. That was great. That was some incredible storytelling right there. And Rollins lost his mind and went after Roman Reigns. 1 stomp, 2-footed stomp outside the ring, and then a stomp on the steps. Wow. That was with some thunder to it. If I'm seeing a Rollins Reigns one-on-one match at WrestleMania, I got no problem with that whatsoever. I know people are bitching about that. How is that bad? I don't think that's bad at all. Sign me up for that. Also with CM Punk, I don't know if him being in that match makes sense because of everything that CM Punk has been saying about, I want to be in the main event of WrestleMania. If it's a one-on-one match between Rollins and Reigns at WrestleMania and there's no title involved, it's not going to be the main event. Sorry. It's not the way it goes. I do think CM Punk will be in the title match with John Cena and Cody. Cena comes out. Obviously, he gets eliminated. Last guy to get eliminated. But after the match, he goes out and during his press conference, just lets everybody know what's best for business is me winning a championship for the 17th time. What's best for business is me winning Elimination Chamber. And I love it. No questions. Just went out there and said it. So I think he will end up wrestling Cody Rhodes in the main event of WrestleMania for the championship. But I think Punk will be involved too. And here's why. It'll get him in there to be in the main event. I think if he's not in there one-on-one, the only palatable thing for him would be if he was in there for Cody Rhodes or with Cody Rhodes and John Cena, his final WrestleMania match. I think that's okay for him. And everybody keeps saying like, oh, the favor. Let's not forget, the favor is Paul Heyman's, not Roman Reigns. Paul Heyman owes him a favor. Roman Reigns doesn't owe him a favor. Paul Heyman's strength goes far beyond Roman Reigns in the bloodline. He's got backstage pull as well. So I think what will happen is that CM Punk tells Paul Heyman, get me into that match to main event WrestleMania. That'll be the favorite, whether that's getting him in the Elimination Chamber, whether that's getting him into a different match to help. I think that makes the most sense. And shout out to our guy, the Yeet God, Jey Uso. For all those bitching and moaning about Jey Uso winning the Royal Rumble, you'll never be happy, ever. For years, people complain about being too predictable. The same guys going over, blah, 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 blah. Go with the guy that everybody cheers for. Go with the hot hand. Go with the guy that's the hottest wrestler in the game. That's what they did. Nobody is more over right now, and that's including Cena, Punk, Roman, Cody, Rollins, Drew McIntyre. Nobody invokes the emotion week in, week out, after a win or after a loss, more than Jey Uso. That is the right call. Main event Jey Uso, main event of WrestleMania. Does he wrestle Gunther? Maybe. Do we know Gunther will still be the champion at that time? We don't know. Do we also know that that's going to be the match, or it's just going to be those two? No, it could be a three-way match. It could be a fatal four-way with KO and Sami Zayn. But for everybody to crap all over Jey Uso winning, like, it's something. If you're one of those people, you may not agree with it, but it's just like, what more do you want? Why watch wrestling then? You have the predictability with Charlotte Flair, the unpredictability of Jey Uso. Like, get real. Everybody was freaking out. And you know what's going to happen? Tonight on Monday Night Raw, people are going to lose their mind when Jey Uso's music comes on. Travis Scott, you heard Triple H mention him in the post-fight press conference, talking about how big he is. He escorted Jey Uso down to the ring, didn't he? Jey Uso is a big deal right now. Capitalize on what you have. They did it last year with Cody Rhodes. They didn't want to see Rock and Roman last year. They wanted to see Cody finish the story. That's what the WWE did. This year, there's no hotter act than Jey Uso. There isn't. He beat Braun Breaker. People were crying in the stands. People want to see him beat Gunther. Now, is there a little bit of fatigue? Maybe they don't want to see that match again because they just saw it. Okay. But it doesn't mean that that is exactly what it's going to be. Maybe there's a stipulation. Maybe there's another guy or two entered. Who cares? But he's the hottest guy out right now. And I think if you're bitching and moaning and complaining about that, you're never going to be happy, ever. John Cena, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, all those guys, they didn't win. Fine. You don't have to lock in what they're doing. It keeps their options open. And I think that makes a whole lot of sense. All right, before we go, the big story over the weekend was the trade of Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. It was Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris going from the Mavericks to the Lakers for Anthony Davis and Max Christie in a first-round pick. So people have been asking, like, what is the comparison, the best comparison in the other major sports for this Luka and AD deal? I'm going to give it to you right now. So here it is. Here are the comparisons in the other major sports for the Luka and AD deal. Now, hold on. Let me pull it up real quick just to make sure. There you go. Here's another thing, too, real quick. Elliot Friedman saying the Lightning made a really hard pitch for Brandon Saad. If you were to rank all teams interested in Tampa Bay's week on Monday morning, they're not in the playoffs. Oh, okay. Just trying to look and see if I'm not missing anything here. Don't be surprised. And we saw the Lightning today with Halverson, bringing him in. I just got a text, too, saying, don't be surprised if the Lightning make another move here in the next day or two. That would be very, very interesting. All right. Here are the best comparisons in the three other major sports for the Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis trade. Number one, we'll go to the NFL. And the best comparison to Luka Doncic right now is Joe Burrow. Cincinnati Bengals quarterback, still young, been to one Super Bowl and one of the best in the game. And that is what I've been trying to do when I'm trying to come up with these comparisons, looking at the two major pieces, Luka and AD. And for Luka, I want a young player, but I want a guy that's full of star power, maybe a one championship appearance. I want to find as many similarities as possible. So when I look at these, and then from the other side for Anthony Davis, I'm looking for a guy that's on the wrong side of 30, that is a champion, that has some injury concerns. So that was kind of my, parameters. That was my parameters when I was putting this thing together. So again, let's start with the NFL. Let's start from the beginning. I just told you my parameters there. Okay, here's the NFL. Joe Burrow, best comparison to Luka, in my opinion. Still young, been to one Super Bowl, and one of the best in the game. Tanner Hudson, tight end for the Bengals. He's the Maxi Kleber of this deal. Played for a couple different teams in the pros before settling in Cincy. And, he's a nice depth piece in the tight end room. I know Maxi Kleber, his only NBA team was the Mavericks, but he played, Pro Bowl overseas for a couple of years before that. Lastly, Ted Karras, an OG, just like Markieff Morris, also a champion during his days with the New England Patriots, respected around the league, and he also has family tradition. We know Markieff Morris's brother Marcus, years of those guys playing together in the NBA. Ted Karras, his dad, his grandfather, his great uncles playing in the league, also a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. So when I look at the Dallas side, Doncic, Kleber, and Markieff Morris, I look Joe Burrow, Tanner Hudson, and Ted Karras. On the other side, all right, I'm looking at Mike Evans, Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver, a single-time champion, just like Anthony Davis, on the wrong side of 30, that's had some injury concerns, but is destined for the Hall of Fame. Great man, great family guy, a solid comparison in my opinion. And then the Max Christie of this deal, Zion McCollum. I like this one because both these guys been in the league for a couple of years, bright future ahead of them, and they both have a brother in the league too, so that kind of helps out. All right, let's go to the NHL. For hockey, the one guy that fit the bill was Leon Draisaitl. Now, I know he's a little bit older than Luka, but when you're talking about a top 10 player in the league and you're talking about one finals appearance, I think this is as close as you're going to get two guys that are just phenomenal scorers. The Maxi Kleber in this deal, Brett Kulak, another guy that's played for a couple teams, and he settled in nicely in Edmonton the last couple of seasons, 31 years young. And then Corey Perry. I love this comp from Markieff Morris. I know he doesn't have a brother in the league, but these are two guys that have been around. They've seen everything. They both have championships on their resume, and they're not afraid to get their hands dirty to help their team win. On the other side, going back, the Anthony Davis in this deal is Mark Stone of the Vegas Golden Knights. Not as surefire of a Hall of Famer as AD or a Mike Evans, but a guy over 30 with a cup on his name, with an injury history. The Golden Knights captain, to me, seems like a good fit here. And then the guy alongside him in this deal is Raphael Lavoie. Now, a young player drafted in the second round, 38th overall in 2019. Max Christie was drafted in the second round, 35th overall in 2022. Max Christie helped his under-16 team win gold in the FIBA Americas down in Brazil in 2019. Lavoie helped the Czech Republic win gold in the World Juniors in 2020. And then the hardest out of all of them was baseball. There isn't really any young players that have won championship appearance like the other two guys that we've used to compare to. But I'm going to go with Julio Rodriguez because, I wanted to go up to age 29 with Leon Draisaitl. I don't want to go over that because how young Luka is has a lot to do with the comparisons and why everybody is so jacked up about this deal. So even though guys like Aaron Judge and Francisco Lindor have won World Series appearance, well, Lindor doesn't, just Aaron Judge. Okay. Just Judge. Okay. I wasn't going to go past 30 with a guy like Aaron Judge. So I went with star power, and I went with a guy that is the face of the franchise with Julio Rodriguez. Imagine if the Mariners traded him. Good Lord, the Mariner Moose would lose his mind. The next guy in the deal, I would go Luke Raley, former Ray and Dodger, who's had some good years in the MLB, just like Maxey has in the NBA. Not maybe an everyday starter, but he can certainly mash. And Mitch Garver is the third guy in this deal. Now, the better part of this deal would have been Justin Turner if we did it last year, who was with the team last season. He's a free agent. He still could end up signing with Seattle because when you look at Justin Turner, he's a perfect fit when it comes to an aging vet who has a championship pedigree. But instead, we'll put the 34-year-old Garver here, who is still widely respected around the league and one of the few elder statesmen in Seattle. Going back the other way, Xander Bogaerts. The comps in baseball were the toughest of all, but I like this one here. He's a champ, a guy on a team with other stars who sometimes has issues staying healthy. I like it. And then check out this one, Luis Campusano, a second-round pick, 39th overall. Remember, Christie was 35th overall. The Padres are hoping to see more from behind the plate, even though they just picked up Elias Diaz in the offseason. So there's my comparisons. Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris go to LA for Anthony Davis and Max Christie. My comps in the NFL, Joe Burrow, Tanner Hudson, and Ted Karras going from the Bengals to the Bucks for Mike Evans and Zion McCollum. In hockey, Leon Draisaitl, Brett Kulak, and Corey Perry going from the Edmonton Oilers to Vegas, and the Golden Knights send back Mark Stone and Rafael Lavoie. And then in baseball, Julio Rodriguez, Luke Raley, and Mitch Garver going from the Seattle Mariners to the San Diego Padres. The Pods send back Xander Bogaerts and Luis Campusano. Listen, nobody ever thinks these are great comparisons, but I did my homework. I did the best that I could. So hopefully you can, I'm going to put this out on social media and then share that with everybody, and then we'll go from there. All right. Make sure you follow everybody that we had on today. A big thank you to everybody that joined us. Bobby the Chief Taylor, Ian Beckles, Joey Johnston, and Bailey Adams. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok. Like and subscribe on YouTube. We're doing big things here on the Jay Recher podcast. That's going to do it for me. We'll see you tomorrow live from Amalie Arena at noon right here on the Jay Recher podcast. I am gone.